I can hardly wait to keep our date this lovely Easter morn. Easter salutations, you bad eggs, you basket cases, you my children of rot. Long before the Christian faith decided to crawl out from under its rock and on top of Easter, the holiday bore an entirely different purpose. Long misrepresented by the media, the true meaning has been lost somewhere in a marshmallow peep show of candy cream eggs and knee-high cellophane grass. Allow me to enlighten you, to show you where it all began. The pagan ritual thinly veiled behind the commercial retail. Come on, Peter Cottontail, it's time to go hopping down the bunny trail. Darken the room, my children of rot, and we shall commence. The name Easter itself is a bastardized pronunciation of the Germanic goddess Eostre. Eostre was the goddess of fertility, the dawn, the spring of rebirth. The entire month of April was once held in her honor, known as Eostre Moneth. Ritual celebrations of fornication were held to thank her for returning the land from the icy blue death of winter and to satisfy her whim. For as easily as she gave the sun and bird song, she could bring storms and crashing thunder. During Eostre Moneth, dew collected from greening fields was said to return youth and to hold the key of immortality. For with the herald of spring all forms of resurrection were possible, and life could begin anew. Alas, Eostre Moneth was reduced to but a day commandeered by Christians attempting to crush the pagan. How could you allow this to happen? How could this appease a mercurial goddess such as Eostre? How long now will she permit you to have the spring before she finds you, the faithless, unworthy of her gifts? Next winter may come and never leave. The Easter rabbit and the Easter egg only serve as further representations of the goddess, as both are symbols of fertility and rebirth, evident with the idiom mad as a March hare, as they are driven mad by sexual impulse during March, the mating season. However, the rabbit also holds much darker connotations than simply promiscuous behavior where pagans are concerned. We will begin with the ancient Egyptian judge of the dead Osiris. Remarkably, this Egyptian god's tale mirrors that of Christ, and is also associated with both the hare and spring. Osiris at times was depicted as having a hare's head, and sacrifices were made to him to begin the spring's flooding of the Nile to renew the crops. These sacrifices were at times thought to be human. The hare can also be found serving as a phonetic symbol in hieroglyphs symbolizing life itself. Anansi, the West African spider god, knows all stories, so I doubt he need watch my program, but he is thought to have been the inspiration for Briar Rabbit. The Germanic goddess Holda was the guardian of the underworld, the protector of unbaptized infants and heretics. She was also thought to be the mistress of the wild hunt, wild hunts being a militia of spirits marching in before catastrophe strikes. Her furious army was comprised of the wailing souls of phantom children, cackling witches on broomsticks, and in the forefront, a band of huge rabbits armed with flaming torches, as the rabbit is also a symbol of cleverness and cunning. Long before the black cat, the rabbit was considered the ultimate witch's familiar in Europe and in China. A familiar is a demon that takes the form of an animal that serves as a black magician's loyal companion. Witches themselves were also said to take their shape as a disguise. And in 1662, Isabel Gowdy, a red-haired Scottish beauty, was accused of witchcraft. Gowdy freely admitted to her misdeeds without the threat of torture. She stunned the courtroom as she plainly admitted to cursing neighbors, sleeping with fairies and the devil himself, blighting crops, and to taking the form of a hare. She repeated these stories without variation in a courtroom on 4 different occasions. These tales birthed the popular custom of a rabbit's foot being good luck. In order for the talisman to work appropriately, however, the rabbit must be shot in a cemetery, and it is the left hind foot that must be chopped off. Why does this hold power, you ask? Well, it may just be the left foot of an honest-to-goodness witch. There are also more harmless superstitions, such as saying some variation of rabbit rabbit for good fortune, ironically, on the 1st of each month. Take a good look at your calendar, kiddies. As for the Easter egg, it must be Christian, right? Wrong. Decorated ostrich eggs were discovered in Africa dating back 60,000 years ago, and golden eggs were placed inside Egyptian tombs of pharaohs. These were meant to symbolize death and rebirth. One should be careful while cracking eggs. It is said a bloody yolk means certain doom, while a double yolk means good fortune. But should you find a homunculus, there's an alchemist in your midst. Alchemy was essentially early chemistry with a heavy dose of magic. As for the homunculus, these creatures were small humanoids created by alchemists that injected male DNA into foreign matter, where it was allowed to incubate and take life. A now popular choice for incubation is a chicken's egg. An alchemist on YouTube claims to have uploaded the lesser and varying degrees of his success on video. Links are provided down below. We mustn't forget the lily, the flower of both Easter and of funerals. There are many tales as to its origin as the flower of royalty, of purity, and rebirth. A popular, somewhat contradictory Christian anecdote claims the lily sprung up from the tears of Eve as she was forced from paradise. This tale of the forbidden fruit does not lend itself well to purity. While on the topic of a lack of purity, the ever-so-modest Victorian-era Christian church once felt it necessary to snip the stamens from the bushels of Easter lilies. They were considered overtly sexual, suggestive of a male appendage, and they couldn't allow the congregation to succumb to impure thoughts. According to the Greeks, the lily came from Hera's breast, as Zeus forced her to breastfeed his immortal bastard child, Hercules. Again, where is this so-called purity? Despite its proud history, the immoral prevails, so put them on your altars, or lay them on my open grave. Why, even the basket bears semicolon significance. It is often considered the symbol for the womb. The term basket case is sometimes used to describe a person unable to cope with reality. But do you know its origin? It's relatively gruesome, as this expression was used on the battlefront by soldiers to describe their fallen brothers missing arms and legs. These limbless men were placed inside baskets and carried off the field. I'm sure you've heard the insane called basket weavers. This derogatory slang comes from recreational crafting in mental institutions, which leads us to our next note. Sometimes regions have their own legends where Easter is concerned. Such is the case with Clifton, Virginia. It was 1904, and successful protests finally shut down the overcrowded lunatic asylum. The patients, being of a violent variety, still needed strict supervision and were transported to other facilities. They were loaded into unmarked vehicles. Discretion was of the utmost importance, as not to alarm the residents of neighboring communities. Each of the cars made it safely to their destination, but one. They crashed along a forgotten stretch of road in Fairfax County. The driver was found dead, his injuries so severe it couldn't be determined whether the impact or the inmates had killed him. The patients who survived fled the twisted wreckage. One by one they were rounded up and taken to their padded rooms. The last to be found was Douglas J. Griffin. Mr. Griffin was committed after dismembering his family with an axe on Easter Sunday, his favorite holiday. He neatly stuffed his family's body parts into Easter baskets amongst the colored eggs, earning him the infamous nickname, the Bunny Man. Griffin was to evade capture to the bitter end. Cornered on the trestle, he made one final desperate attempt to flee that found him crushed beneath a steam train. As the body, or what was left, was removed, the faint sound of laughter seemed to echo in the distance. Bunny carcasses, skinned from head to toe, are still found near the site of Bunny Man's death. The shadowy figure of a man with floppy ears roams the tunnels of the train bridge to this day, forever waiting for Easter. It is proven that there was never an insane asylum in Clifton, Virginia, and even the nearest mental hospitals have no record of a man named Douglas J. Griffin. Then who was the man in the bunny costume that struck Fairfax County, Virginia in 1970? An Air Force cadet named Bob Bennett and his fiancée were on their way to visit family when they stopped along Guinea Road in Burke, Virginia. They noticed a strange figure, dimly illuminated by the taillights. As they turned to look, Something came crashing through the windshield, ever near Bennett's fiancée. As Bennett put the car in gear, he saw the figure peeking through the broken glass. There he stood, a huge man in a bunny costume, seemingly in the middle of nowhere. The costumed figure screamed madly as the tires squealed, "I have your tag number! I have your tag number!" They sped down the dirt road, only stopping when they reached a phone. It was then they realized, amongst the bits of broken glass in the floorboard, was a hatchet. The madman had fully intended to kill them. A week later, a security guard named Paul Phillips reported seeing a figure in a bunny suit carrying an axe. This time the bunny man was destroying a home being built in Kings Park West. As he swung his axe into the porch posts, he screamed, "Get out of here! Get out of here or I'll bust you in the head!" Paul heeded his warning and called the police. 50 more reports followed from hysterical citizens, describing the same costumed madman. The Washington Post went as far as to write about the bizarre phenomenon on 4 different occasions. One headline reading, "The rabbit reappears. Perhaps he will again," given that all police leads went hopping down the rabbit hole a long, long time ago. Of course, there are other cases of murder on Easter. James Ruppert in 1975 killed 11 members of his own family before they could even cut the ham. A pinup girl and her mother were killed by a mad artist named Robert Irwin, Easter weekend 1937, launching the largest manhunt in U.S. history since the kidnapping of the Lindbergh baby. Thankfully, this hunt was much more successful than the latter. So as you see, much like the proverbial egg hunt, there's much more than meets the eye for Eostre, the rabbit, and the powers of spring. Take to the misty hollows of a bygone age and search for your own truth. Of course, if you choose to be hard-boiled, the truth may just find you first, making you our next show's subject of interest. But only time could tell for certain. But if I were you, I'd err on the side of caution. And as always, kiddies, remember me as you scroll by. If you like our show, then please subscribe. As we are now, so you must be. Prepare for